And that, I would say that's always true. A method and a position are always involved in one another. Logic is not a neutral something. It isn't like a sharp knife, which a bread knife. You can either use it to cut bread with and give it to your covenant children, or you can cut your throat with it. In other words, that is what people often think of as being what a method is, that you can come to any conclusion with. I would say, on the contrary, a starting point and a method and a conclusion are always involved in one another. Now, isn't that horrible? Yes, here's the non-Christian starting point, the non-Christian method, and the non-Christian conclusion. You don't start with a method here, with a starting point there, the same between Christians and non-Christians, and then the method the same, and then, now, look here, my friend, I want you to come to this conclusion, to the Christian conclusion, not to that conclusion, as though you were on the starting point and on the methodology in agreement with him. It is fatal, absolutely fatal to your own efforts if you grant that the starting point is the same. The starting point is not the same. There isn't one fact on which the Christian and the non-Christian agree as to its nature. Don't you see? For you, every fact is a created fact. For him, no fact. For every fact is a non-created fact. There isn't any more basic difference than that. And your fact, you know, every fact is what, according to the providence of God, it is and must be. For him, every fact is and must be what is not in accordance with the providence of God. Well, therefore, if you grant that he starts right, and that you, a method, such as Aristotle has, for instance, which fits in with that starting point, then it's a foregone conclusion that he will get you to his conclusion, unless he is inconsistent. Now, if he wants to be inconsistent, and if you can get him to be inconsistent, well, that's wonderful. Then you make Christians by stealth, so to speak, when they aren't looking. Well, or especially when they aren't thinking. Now, that's what we ought not to do. We ought to make self-conscious Christians, particularly today. We want Christian people today who know and believe why they are Christians and can give account of their own faith, because that's what is needed in order to break down the position of others. If you take the fully Christian position, then you can say, well, now you don't like this, do you? That you have a method that's included in the position, and vice versa. All right, then I say, let's go on your position for argument's sake. You start with a self, that's your starting point, not created, therefore floating around in an ocean, a shore of chance. You start with facts that are not created, therefore you have pure contingency as a principle of individuation. You start with an abstract, impersonal principle of logic. That's your string. It has to be infinite. You have to do what in our position God does. God for us has strung all the beads. He has one comprehensive plan. We know in advance. He tells us what he is doing, and not in every detail, and we don't understand it exhaustively at all. But nevertheless, we have his word for it. If a little boy goes out in the woods with his dad, he may be only 6 years old, and he's got a pop gun or a BB gun, but he's not afraid because his dad is with him. Well, that's the way we are. We are not ourselves wiser or better than our others, and we don't have insights of our own. What we have received, says Paul, we have received by grace. But having received it, it is the truth. And we can now, with this truth that has been given us, point out that any other position that anybody has, and then it makes no difference what that position is, whether it's idealistic, realistic, critical, realistic, existentialistic, this or that or what have you, right down to Sat, from Thales to Sat. You have these principles, and then you can show that he is a man of water that's going around building a ladder of water, setting it on the water, putting it against the water, climbing out of the water, can't get on the first ladder, rung of the ladder of water because he's made of water. Now, that's not funny. I don't object you're laughing. I don't mean that. But I mean that is actually the absurdity to which we must reduce his position. And then we're absolutely in accord with what Paul says, hath not God made foolish the wisdom of this world. Now, Paul knew what he was talking about. He knew his Greek philosophy.